Jack believed he was simply doing the right thing, but when a police car pulled up to his house just hours later, his life took an unexpected turn. The warm glow of the setting sun bathed Camden, New Jersey, in golden light as children hurried home. Among them was 13-year-old Jack, his energetic strides causing his backpack to sway with every step. The flap of a loose strap hit his side rhythmically as his mind replayed the challenges of a math quiz he had just completed. As he walked along Franklin Avenue, something unusual caught his attention. Near a cracked curb, a wallet lay abandoned on the sidewalk. Jack halted mid-stride, scanning his surroundings. The street was eerily quiet, save for the sharp bark of a dog behind a chain-link fence. Cautiously, Jack bent down, picking up the weathered wallet, its leather edges rough with wear. Inside, he found a driver's license, a few crisp $20 bills, and some scattered cards. The ID identified the owner as Dominic Harper, who lived only a few blocks away. For a moment, Jack hesitated. He could easily pocket the money. After all, no one was watching. But his mother's voice echoed in his mind. True integrity is what you do when no one's watching. Without further deliberation, he slipped the wallet into his bag and headed toward the address. Dominic's house was a simple brick structure with a faded blue door. Jack's heart raced as he approached, a sudden wave of anxiety washing over him. What if she accused him of stealing? His palms were damp as he raised his hand to knock. Moments later, the door swung open to reveal a woman with kind eyes and a messy bun. "Yes?" she asked, her curiosity evident. Jack stammered, "Hi, I found this wallet on the sidewalk and I think it's yours." He retrieved it from his backpack, extending it toward her. Dominic's expression shifted to astonishment. "Oh my goodness, it is mine. I didn't even realize I'd lost it," she exclaimed, clutching the wallet tightly. "Thank you so much. You've saved me a lot of trouble." Jack shrugged, attempting to downplay his good deed, though a faint smile tugged at his lips. "No problem," he said modestly, retreating toward the steps. Before he could leave, Dominic called out, "Wait, what's your name?" Pausing, Jack replied, "It's Jack." She nodded, her voice warm with gratitude. "Jack, you have a good heart. I won't forget this." Embarrassed but pleased, Jack muttered a shy "thanks" before jogging away. Dominic stood on her porch, holding the wallet and smiling, deeply touched by the boy's honesty. Jack had no idea how drastically this act of kindness would alter his evening. Later, he sat at the kitchen table, working on his homework as the mouth-watering aroma of baked chicken filled the small kitchen. His mom, Gloria, hummed softly while moving about, and his younger sister, Tasha, played cheerfully with her dolls nearby. Everything felt ordinary, until the sound of tires crunching gravel broke the calm. Jack looked up, noticing faint flashes of red and blue lights filtering through the curtains. "Mom," he called hesitantly. Gloria, puzzled, set down her dish towel and peeked through the window. "It's a police car," she said, her tone tinged with unease. Jack's stomach tightened. He couldn't recall doing anything wrong, but the sight of the patrol car made him anxious. Before anyone could speculate, a firm knock echoed from the front door. Gloria exchanged a quick glance with Jack before walking to answer it, Jack following closely behind. Standing at the door was a tall police officer, his uniform crisp, his face serious, but not unfriendly. "Good evening, ma'am," he greeted politely. "Is Jack home?" Jack's heart raced. Gloria instinctively stepped in front of her son, her voice firm. "What's this about, officer?" The man cleared his throat, his gaze briefly shifting to Jack. "We're here regarding a report about a wallet that was returned earlier today." Jack stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, sir. I gave the wallet back. I found it on the sidewalk." The officer squinted at him, leaning down slightly as if scrutinizing Jack's face. "And you're sure you didn't take anything out of it before returning it?" Jack's jaw dropped in surprise.
"What? No."
"I didn't take anything." Gloria's tone turned sharp, her protective instinct kicking in. "Now wait just a minute. My son did the right thing, and you're here accusing him of stealing?" Before the tension could escalate further, the officer's stern expression suddenly broke into a wide grin. Relax, ma'am, he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. I'm just messing with him. Jack blinked in confusion. What? He asked. At that moment, Dominic Harper stepped out from behind the officer, laughing. Jack, I'm so sorry for scaring you, she said, her voice warm and full of kindness. This is my son, Chris. He's a police officer, and we thought it'd be fun to give you a little surprise for being such a good kid. Jack stared at them, his confusion slowly giving way to relief and then disbelief. Wait, this was a joke. Chris chuckled, reaching out to shake Jack's hand. Not just a joke, kid, he said. I wanted to personally thank you for doing the right thing. You've got more integrity than a lot of adults I've met. Dominic stepped forward, placing a hand on Jack's shoulder. I'm serious, Jack. What you did today meant a lot to me. People don't always go out of their way to return something like that. You deserve to be celebrated. Jack felt the tension leave his body, a small smile creeping onto his face. I didn't think it was a big deal, he admitted, still a little unsure about everything that had just happened. Well, it was, Dominic said firmly. And I don't forget people who do good things. You'll see. Chris gave Jack a playful salute before stepping back toward the patrol car. Dominic waved goodbye, promising to see him again soon. As the car pulled away, Jack turned to his mom, who was still trying to process what had just happened. Well, Gloria said, shaking her head with a wry smile, that's one way to say thank you. Jack chuckled nervously, his earlier fear fading into a strange mix of pride and amusement. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a life-changing friendship. The next morning, Jack woke up with a mix of embarrassment and curiosity about the events of the previous evening. As he walked to school, his thoughts kept drifting back to Dominic and Officer Chris. It felt strange, yet oddly comforting, that they had gone out of their way to acknowledge something he thought was simply the right thing to do. By the time Jack got home that afternoon, he had almost forgotten about it, until there was another knock at the door. This time, it was Dominic herself holding a small gift bag. Hi, Jack. She greeted him warmly. I wanted to stop by and thank you again properly this time. Jack hesitated before opening the screen door. You didn't have to do that, Miss Harper. Dominic chuckled. I wanted to. Besides, I owe you an apology for scaring you like that last night. Chris gets his sense of humor from me, unfortunately. She handed him the bag, and Jack peered inside. To his surprise, there was a gift card to his favorite sneaker store and a handwritten note. The gesture took him by surprise. Wow. Thank you, he said softly, almost in a whisper. Don't mention it, Dominic said, smiling. But you know, I wasn't kidding when I said I don't forget people who do good things. I'd love to get to know you better, Jack. You remind me of my son when he was your age, always doing the right thing, even when it's not easy. Jack didn't quite know how to respond. He glanced over his shoulder at his mom, who had come to the door and was now watching the interaction with a cautious but intrigued expression. Gloria stepped forward, her tone polite but measured. That's very kind of you, Miss Harper. What exactly do you have in mind? Well, Dominic began. Jack mentioned he enjoys reading and exploring new things. That reminds me so much of my son, Chris, when he was your age. She paused for a moment, glancing briefly at Gloria before continuing. I run a weekend mentorship program for kids in the neighborhood. It's a small group, and we focus on career exploration, life skills, and building confidence. I'd love for Jack to be a part of it. I think he'd fit right in. Jack's eyes widened in surprise.
Me?
In a mentorship program? He asked, his voice a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. Dominic smiled. Yes, you. The way you handled returning my wallet without expecting anything in return? That shows character, Jack. And that's exactly what we want to foster in young people like you. Gloria crossed her arms, her expression still cautious. That sounds interesting, Miss Harper, but I'd like to know more about what it involves before we commit to anything. Dominic nodded, seeming to anticipate the concern. Of course. I completely understand. Why don't I leave my contact information with you, and we can set up a time to discuss it in more detail. Maybe Chris can join too, so you can meet him properly. She pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to Gloria. Jack, who had been silent up until then, finally spoke up, his voice full of excitement. "Mom, I think it sounds pretty cool. Maybe I could try it out for just one weekend." Gloria glanced down at him, her expression softening as she noticed the excitement in his eyes. "We'll see," she replied, slipping the card into her pocket. "I just want to make sure it's a good fit for you." Dominic smiled warmly. "That's all I ask. No pressure. But Jack, you should know, what you did yesterday wasn't small. It meant a lot, and it's the kind of decision that shows real strength of character." Turning back toward her car, she added, "You've got a bright future, Jack. Don't forget that." Jack watched as Dominic walked toward her car and drove away, the sound of her engine slowly fading into the distance. When the door closed, Jack turned to his mom, excitement still bubbling inside him. "Do you think I can join, Mom? I'd really like to try it out." Gloria looked down at him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "We'll see," she said again, her tone gentler this time. "I want to make sure it's a good fit for you first." That night, Jack lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with thoughts of what the mentorship program might involve. He had never been a part of anything like that before, but the idea of learning new things and meeting new people excited him. Little did he know, the events of the past 2 days, the wallet, the police officer, and Dominic's kindness were just the beginning of a journey that would soon lead him to opportunities and experiences far beyond anything he had imagined. "He likes science," Dominic continued, her voice warm with enthusiasm. "My niece works at the local community college, and I think he'd love their summer STEM program. I could help get him in if he's interested." Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? That would be amazing." Gloria studied Dominic for a moment, her thoughts running through the possibilities. She glanced at Jack, whose enthusiasm was hard to ignore. After a long pause, Gloria finally smiled. "That's very generous of you. We'd love to hear more about it." And just like that, a connection began to form. Over the following weeks, Dominic stopped by often, always bringing something small, cookies, a book, or even just a kind word. It was clear she was genuinely invested in Jack's future, and slowly, Gloria's initial wariness started to fade. Jack soon found himself spending more time with Dominic, visiting her home, and even meeting some of her extended family. Dominic wasn't just a kind neighbor. She became a mentor. She encouraged Jack to dream bigger, helping him see possibilities he hadn't considered before. One day, while they were sitting on her porch, Dominic asked, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Jack thought for a moment. "I want to be an engineer. I like building things, and my teacher says I'm good at math." Dominic nodded, a thoughtful smile spreading across her face. "That's a great goal, Jack. And you know what? You're going to make it. I'll do everything I can to help you get there." Her words weren't just empty promises. Dominic connected Jack with a local robotics club, helped him apply for scholarships, and even introduced him to people in her network who could guide him. For Jack, it wasn't just about the opportunities, it was about the belief Dominic had in him. It was the kind of belief that fueled his confidence and made him feel like he could accomplish anything. But their bond wasn't one-sided. Dominic often shared stories of her own struggles, and Jack found himself becoming a source of encouragement for her as well. He reminded her of the power of simple acts of kindness and how they could ripple into something much bigger. Their friendship became a cornerstone in both their lives, and the once unlikely pair soon felt more like family. Over the next few months, Jack's relationship with Dominic deepened in ways he never expected. She wasn't just a friendly neighbor anymore. She became a mentor, a guide, and a consistent presence in his life. Jack found himself spending more time at Dominic's house, learning from her and her extended circle of friends and family. One day, Dominic invited Jack and Gloria to a small community event she was hosting at a local library in Camden. The event was focused on mentorship and opportunities for young people. Jack wasn't sure what to expect, but as they entered the library's event space, he was amazed by the energy in the room. Tables were set up with information on various programs, everything from scholarships to internships, and local professionals were there to answer questions. "Jack," Dominic said, pulling him aside, "I want you to meet someone." She led him to a man in his early 30s who was tinkering with a miniature robot at one of the booths. "This is Dr. Ellis," she explained. He's an engineer at one of the top firms in Philadelphia, and he used to mentor kids just like you. Jack's eyes lit up. He and Dr. Ellis spent the next hour talking about robotics, coding, and engineering. For the first time, Jack could clearly envision himself in that world. When the event ended, Jack thanked Dominic with a hug, a rare gesture for him. "I don't know how to thank you for all of this," he said, his voice sincere. "You don't have to," Dominic replied with a warm smile. "Just promise me you'll never stop believing in yourself." That promise stayed with Jack, especially during the more challenging moments of his journey. One of those moments came a few weeks later when Jack entered a robotics competition through the club Dominic had helped him join. He was confident in his design, but when it came time to present, he froze. Overwhelmed by the crowd and the pressure to perform, Jack couldn't find his words. He barely managed to explain how his robot worked, and everyone else's presentation seemed so much better than his. Later, Jack sat on the curb outside the venue, staring at the pieces of his robot, feeling defeated. Dominic found him there, her face filled with concern. "What happened in there?" she asked gently, sitting down beside him. Jack shook his head, fighting back tears. "I messed up. I couldn't even finish explaining how it works. Everyone else was so much better than me." Dominic didn't rush to respond. She let the silence linger for a moment before speaking. "Jack, do you know how many times I've failed at things I cared about?" Jack looked up at her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "More times than I can count," Dominic continued softly. "But failure isn't the end. It's just part of the process." Jack's face crumpled in frustration. "But what if I'm not good enough?" Dominic smiled softly, her eyes filled with understanding. "You're more than good enough. And if you ever forget that, I'll be here to remind you." Her words were enough to rekindle Jack's determination. He decided to rework his presentation for the next competition, this time leaning into the support system Dominic had helped him build. The weeks following the competition were a turning point for Jack. With Dominic's encouragement and support, he poured himself into refining his robot design and practicing his presentation. His confidence began to grow as he embraced both the lessons learned from his earlier setback and the belief that Dominic had shown him in his abilities. By the time the next competition came around, Jack stood before the judges, no longer afraid of failure, but ready to prove to himself that he was capable of achieving his dreams. And through it all, Dominic remained by his side, helping him every step of the way. Dominic invited Dr. Ellis over for one-on-one coaching sessions, and Jack found himself learning not only about engineering, but also about confidence and preparation. On the day of the next competition, Dominic arrived early to pick Jack up. She noticed his hands trembling slightly as he held his robot. "Nervous?" she asked with a knowing smile. "A little," Jack admitted. "What if I mess up again?" Dominic placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've already done the hard part, Jack. You didn't give up. Whatever happens today, just remember how far you've come." At the competition, Jack stood among a group of bright, ambitious kids, each with their own creations. The energy in the room was electric, but instead of letting it overwhelm him, Jack focused on the advice Dominic had given him. He reminded himself that this wasn't just about winning, it was about showing up and doing his best. When it was finally his turn to present, Jack stepped up to the podium, took a deep breath, and began speaking. His voice wavered at first, but as he explained his robot's functionality, he gained confidence. By the time he finished, the audience was clapping enthusiastically. Jack didn't win first place that day, but he walked away with something far more valuable, a newfound belief in himself. On the ride home, Dominic couldn't stop smiling. "You are incredible out there, Jack," she said, her pride evident. Jack grinned, his earlier doubts replaced by pride. "I couldn't have done it without you." As time went on, Jack continued to thrive with Dominic's help. He applied for a prestigious summer program at a university in Philadelphia. The application process was grueling, but Dominic guided him through every step, from writing his essay to preparing for the interview. When the acceptance letter finally arrived, Jack ran straight to Dominic's house, waving the envelope in the air. "I got in," he shouted, breathless with excitement. Dominic hugged him tightly, tears of joy welling in her eyes. "I knew you would," she said softly. Years passed, and Jack's journey was nothing short of remarkable. He graduated from high school at the top of his class, went on to study engineering at a prestigious university, and eventually landed his dream job at a cutting-edge robotics firm. Throughout it all, Dominic remained a constant in his life. She attended his graduations, celebrated his achievements, and reminded him of the values that had brought him this far. Jack often reflected on how much his life had changed because of her kindness and support. One sunny afternoon, Jack returned to Camden to visit Dominic. She had recently retired and was spending her days volunteering at the library where she had first introduced him to Dr. Ellis. As they sat on her porch, Jack said, "Dominic, I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't found your wallet that day." Dominic laughed, shaking her head. "You'd still be amazing, Jack. All I did was give you a little push. The rest was all you." Jack smiled, but his expression turned serious. "I've been thinking. I want to start a scholarship fund for kids in this neighborhood who have big dreams but need a little help to get there. I want to call it the Harper Scholarship in your honor." Dominic's eyes filled with tears. "Jack, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Jack replied with a grin. That moment encapsulated the beauty of their bond, a connection that had grown from a simple act of kindness into a lifelong friendship that transformed not only Jack's life, but also the lives of others in their community. As the story closed, Jack and Dominic stood together, watching children play on the street, dreaming of a brighter future for all of them. Their journey was a testament to the power of compassion, integrity, and the unexpected ways people can change each other's lives.